Good morning, everyone. Sorry about 2 minutes ago. I guess I pressed live and then left the room. So I apologize. I saw some people were hopping on, but I wanted to make sure that I was a little bit set up. I am hiding in my son's room because we have a snow day today. Hiding. My children know that I'm in here, but it's a quiet space, and I wanted to make sure that I came to you guys this morning to talk about the number one lie that's told to working moms. So this is a little bit, sometimes I come on and I give tips and things that you could do or implement. This is something for you to think about. Maybe think about over the weekend. Think about, different TV shows that you've watched, movies that you've seen, stories that you've heard, and start reflecting on the way that they've influenced you. Because as much as I've made the title, it's the biggest lie that's told to working moms, I would say that it's actually the biggest lie that's told to, I want to say, Americans or people who are immersed in the culture of the United States. I wouldn't go as far as to say that it's the entire world, but it's a lie that we get told when we're watching movies or TV shows that gets from a very young age imprinted in our head, and then we, without even realizing it, get positive emotions for doing these things when they're not necessarily the healthiest thing for us to do. So an example of this is not the biggest lie, but an example of this would be that when we're growing up, this is one that a lot of more people have heard. When we were growing up, we saw a lot of Disney movies where there were princesses and they were being, they were in some sort of turmoil and they were helpless, and then along came a prince and saved her. And that wasn't even just in Disney movies. That was in, almost every, I remember growing up and there were a lot of movies where you had a girl who wasn't that pretty and wasn't that cool, and then she got a makeover, and then the most popular guy in school loved her. So what are those stories telling us about ourselves? They're saying that we need to be saved by a guy, that it's not what's inside that counts, it's what's outside that counts, that we're helpless, that our life gets meaning and we live happily ever after when there's a man saving us in the picture. So, there are now more recent movies that are trying to change those messages, and I commend them. But what I'm going to talk about today is a different message that we get. And I believe that it's just a general message, and then when we become moms, especially working moms where there's so much on our plate, having that message, having that thought that somewhere in the recesses of our brain that it's a good thing gets us into a lot of trouble. Okay, so that's what I'm going to be talking about today. So what we get taught in American society, I'm going to keep it with American society, it could be like this in other cultures too, but in our main culture, is that in order to be successful at something, you have to work your butt off. Okay, I'm going to try to keep it clean today, but if a curse word comes out, I apologize. So we have to work our butts off in order to be worthy or have a story told about us or to be successful. It's the whole what the first thing that's coming to my head is an 80s studying montage. Somebody fell behind in school, but then stayed up for 7 days straight and studied, and then they succeeded, right? So work really hard, and then you're going to succeed. Sacrifice a whole bunch of stuff, keep working, and then you're going to succeed. And listen, I'm all for hard work, I get that, but when you really speak to someone, or an athlete, right? There are movies about athletes where they work so hard, and that's why they succeed. They just work all the time. But if you speak to a real athlete, there actually is a website that's called The Real Athlete, and I highly recommend, and I'll maybe post some videos. I can post some videos in the comments here that I thought were so awesome. When you talk to a real athlete, a real successful athlete, they don't do their sport all of the time. If they just worked all of the time, they would burn out, they would sustain injury, they wouldn't be able to do as well at their sport as they can do if they do it in a way that involves wellness. So what does that mean? If you speak to a real athlete who's really, really successful and gets it and wants to play the sport or be involved in whatever they're involved in for the long haul, they have to get really smart on the proper way to train, that the proper way not just to train playing the game, but also to take care of themselves, what they're eating, how they're sleeping. Their mindset is huge. There's a whole spectrum of stuff that they have to do to make sure that they're on the top of their game. That's the reality of an athlete who's doing this right. It's not work, work, work all the time, because if they do that, they're going to have to leave the game earlier than somebody else who's doing it with wellness, because the person who's doing it with wellness can do it longer. Okay? So if you think about what are movies or TV shows that you've watched that, give you these messages that if you work really, 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 really hard, that's what should be rewarded. That's what shows that you're really dedicated. Okay, and I call this the martyr syndrome. And if you mix that with the instincts of a mom to give to her child, it could be disastrous. Because then we have these messages in our head, and not to mention working moms, so we have these messages in our head that we're supposed to work, work, work as much as we can to complete burnout in order to really show that we're dedicated to something, right? So that's going to show up where you're working, and it's going to show up as a mom at home, which is another job. Okay, so if you are burning the candle at both ends because you are working with this mentality at your day job, or maybe it's your night job, whatever, you're outside of the house job, and you're doing that at home, and you're not doing anything involving wellness or taking care of yourself, and nothing to sustain, you're not thinking about the fact that, like, you're an athlete. You've signed up for quite the career as an athlete if you're a working mom. So in what ways are you making sure that you're in this for the long haul, that you're not going to burn out, that you're not going to fatigue or sustain injuries? Like what do you have in there? And when we watch TV shows and movies and it shows, well, I sacrificed everything. Yes, it involves sacrifice. I get it. But when you sacrifice to the point of your own well-being, your own wellness, then you're not actually playing at the top of your game. So what we need is an actual system in place, because what happens is when we take care of ourselves, because we've been told these messages that taking care of yourself and doing something for yourself, and I don't mean like, we've talked about this before, I don't mean like an hour massage every single day, or I don't even mean going to the gym every single day. I mean doing things for yourself, making sure that your mask is on before you put on your child's mask. What happens is if we do try to do those things, but we feel guilty while doing them because we still have these messages in our head, then they're not helpful. So if you go and get your nails done, and wouldn't even suggest that unless you do it correctly in terms of what self-care actually is, but say you know how to do that in a way that it's going to actually feel good and it's going to sustain you. But the whole time you're there, you're feeling guilty that you're there, and you feel like you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be spending money on it, you feel sorry for your kids because you're not with your kids. That's not self-care. That's not helpful. So one thing that we can do to make sure that when we're taking time for ourselves, when we're doing something for ourselves, that we can not feel guilty about it, is to have a system in place so that we know that we've taken care of other people already. So what we do is we spend the entire day running around with like this mom guilt, like that it's never, 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 never enough, because we haven't determined what enough is. So at the end of the day, we still have the mom guilt, and we're just sitting in mom guilt. So we just have this emotion and we don't know why. But when you have a system in place to know, nope, I did this, and this, which was on, in my system of what I was going to do in terms of taking care of my kids, taking care of my business, if I have a partner, taking care of my partner, and now I also can have time for myself, the guilt's gone. So again, it's not about being a martyr. We have so many messages that are telling us, be a martyr, sacrifice yourself, sacrifice all that you have, because that means that you really care, and that means you're really dedicated. So if we're told that about school and then we're given a child, like, of course we're going to sacrifice everything. Our instincts are going to be to sacrifice every single thing for them, because that's what we're being told about school, about little things. And then we bring people into the world. But that's a lie. That is not the truth. Okay, what we need is a system in place to know that we're taking care of them. We need awareness that part of taking care of them is taking care of ourselves as well. And the system gives us the freedom to take care of ourselves in an efficient way. So we need efficiency when it comes to taking care of ourselves. The same way an athlete knows what to eat, how long to sleep, what kind of physical therapy to go to, what kind of weight training to go to sustain, because they are educated in that area. So you need that as well. And then when you're doing those things, you don't feel guilty. You know you're doing it for your kids. You know, you're not doing it just for yourself. You're actually doing the self-care for your kids, the same way that the athlete knows that he is going to the gym and lifting weights even though he's a basketball player, but he's doing it so he gets better at the game. When you do self-care in the right way and you have a system in place for it and you understand what it needs to look like, you don't feel guilty because you're doing it for your kids. You're not doing it for yourself. I mean, that's the side point. It benefits you too, but you are doing it so you can sustain energy in the long game of being a parent, especially a working mom. All right, guys, that's what I have for you today. So think about the TV shows you've watched when you were younger, the movies, all these messages that we're getting, the news broadcasts about how much sacrifice somebody made in their life, and that's why they're worth it to be there. I don't know. And then go check out The Real Athlete and see the stories that are there. And I'm going to post a couple. There's one with a gymnast, and then there's one, I can't remember what sport it was, but they're so good, where you really get real in terms of when you have to exert an extreme amount of energy for a long period of time, because that is your career, that is your career, working mom. That is what we have to do. How to do that for the long game so that you don't burn out and you don't sustain injury. All right, guys, that's all I've got for you today. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend, and I'll see you guys on Monday.